Number 3. I'm in my mid-20s, and I consider myself to be a pretty small woman, both in height and weight. I've never taken any self-defense classes, and I would be in pretty big trouble if someone were to actually attack me. At present, I live in a small suburb outside of Boston with 2 other female roommates. We live in a condominium complex that has roughly 200 units, and our condo happens to be in the furthest corner of the grounds. We were the last unit in a row of 10, with woods to our left and back. The area we live in is widely regarded as a high crime area. It's the sketchy part of town. I was never genuinely concerned about my safety until one night in October of 2015. I had just flown back into Boston from a work trip in Tampa, Florida. My flight arrived at Logan Airport around 10:30 p.m. In between gathering my luggage and car, I didn't make it back to my apartment until midnight. I locked my car, grabbed my suitcase, and headed inside to my empty apartment. I wasn't worried about staying at the condo alone, as it was a pretty typical situation. My 2 roommates were often working late or staying with their boyfriends. As always, I locked the screen door, then the wooden door, and I felt like that was enough protection from the outside world. I was greeted by my cat when I went into my room. The temperature was unusually warm for October, so I opened all of my windows and crawled into bed. I should note here, as I mentioned before, the back side of our apartment is surrounded by woods. We have a row of parking spaces directly behind us, but other than that, it's strictly forest. That particular night, I was lucky enough to find a parking spot that lies directly beneath my bedroom window. At 3:30 a.m., I woke up to footsteps and rustling outside. I figured that it was one of the other residents either getting back from the bar or grabbing something from their vehicle, so I rolled over and tried to fall back asleep. After about 4 to 5 minutes of loud rustling, I decided to check out what was going on. To my horror, a massive man wearing all black clothing and a black mask was inside the passenger door of my car, going through my glove box. I was so shocked to see that someone was inside my car that it took me a few moments to understand what was going on. Realizing that someone had broken into my car, I immediately panicked. I have a spare apartment key inside of my glove box, and my apartment door was only a few steps away from where he was standing. I knew that fleeing was not an option, as he was blocking my only exit. I also knew that if he were to use the key to get inside my condo, I would likely be in a very dangerous situation. Out of pure stupidity, I grabbed my car keys and hit the lock button, which causes my car to beep. The loud beep startled the man who was inside my car so much that he backed up and stumbled on the curb. Within seconds, he looked up at my bedroom window, and our eyes met. He knew that I had seen him in my car, and to my dismay, he stared without flinching. I was so terrified that I backed up from the window and immediately ran into my roommate's closet. I dialed 911 and reported the situation in a really hushed whisper. I was fully expecting the man to break in and find me inside her room. It took the officers 12 minutes to arrive at my condo, by which time the guy had taken off. I still don't know how he was able to get into my car that night, as I was sure I had locked it. Amazingly, nothing was taken. I didn't have much in there anyway. But the scary thing was that the latch on our screen door was completely broken off. I didn't hear him trying to gain entry into my house, but I was also in the closet and on the phone with the police dispatcher. So, who knows? All I can say is I'm so lucky that I had my windows open that night and interrupted him. Otherwise, he might have used the key to get in. Number 2. This happened to me about 6 or 7 years ago. I'm a female and I was 17 at the time. So it was the beginning of the summer and I was traveling to my summer home like I did every year. I live in a small southeastern European country and this is pretty normal for most people here. I would usually travel by train overnight because I would get to sleep for most of the trip. The train took about 8 hours. It didn't cross a great distance. It was just really slow. Anyway, I've done the same trip alone a couple of times already and never really had a problem. Also, my country is pretty safe, so taking this trip on my own was never really a concern for me or my parents. The train left at 11 p.m. and was scheduled to arrive at 7 in the morning, meaning that I had 7 to 8 hours of sleep, which was great. At first, I was alone in the compartment. But after I got settled in, a girl about my age asked me if she could join me in my compartment, and I said yes. We started talking a bit, the usual. Where are you from? How old? What do you do? Even though I was comfortable traveling alone and was bigger than her and a year older, I was still happy that she was there. We talked until midnight and decided to get some sleep. Since the train was pretty empty and it was just the two of us in our compartment, we could both lie down. The compartment had 3 seats on each side, so we could spread across 3 seats each. I just started to doze off when I heard our compartment door opening. There was a man standing there. He looked at us for a second and then asked,
"Do you have any room for me?"
Now what was weird about this was, first of all, the train was pretty empty, so I was certain that there was other completely empty compartments. Secondly, he saw both of us lying down, taking up all the space, so really there was no need to ask. And finally, it was the way he phrased it. Do we have any room for him? I squirmed a little bit and started to answer, but he left the second I started squirming. I remember him closing the door as I was about to answer, and I thought it was weird, but whatever. My sleepy brain didn't really want to bother, so I forgot about it instantly. I think the girl and I exchanged a what the fuck look, and that was it. However, not more than 5 minutes passed, and he was back. Again, the same. He opened the door and asked us if we had any room for him. I was a stupid, scared kid back then, so I just stayed silent and pretended to be asleep. Luckily, the girl was smarter than me, and though she kinda looked timid, she sorta yelled at him, "No, you can see that there is no room. We're trying to sleep." He stared at us with this empty, vacant expression, but I saw something in his eyes that can only be described as sinister. He then closed the door and left. I kinda chuckled, probably my nerves, and she smiled at me, and that was it. I somehow managed to fall asleep again, although it was a very light sleep and I kept waking up throughout the night. That was probably for the better. The girl and I went our separate ways in the morning, as we were both traveling further. I didn't have Facebook back then, so I didn't stay in contact with her, and I had forgotten her name over the years. Although for some reason as I'm writing this, I want to say her name was Ivana. I will, however, be forever grateful for her for possibly saving me that night, and for teaching me that you can always stand up for yourself, even if you're a small, fragile-looking girl. We didn't get a good look at the guy because it was dark, but my impression back then was that he was between 30 and 40, and he had no business to hang out with us. If he wanted to sleep, there was plenty of other empty compartments. That's why I think he had something else in mind. I was so happy that the girl was there because I have no idea what I would have done on my own. I'd like to think I would have stood up for myself, but I honestly don't know. Number 1. I'm a 29-year-old guy from Brazil. I'm a teacher at a university here, and I practice Kung Fu in my spare time. The political scene in Brazil is insane these days. I've even heard stories about people getting attacked on the streets just because they were wearing red, which happens to be the color of President Dilma's political party. A few days ago, I was heading home from work late one night. It was around 11 p.m. I got on the bus, and as there was no seats available, I just stood near the exit door as I usually do. I got my MP3 player from my backpack. Yeah, I still carry around an MP3 player. And I turned on some Black Dahlia Murder. I was there minding my own business, silently singing along, when I noticed a guy sitting in the back of the bus. He was staring at me with this really creepy look on his face. I thought it was funny at first, but he didn't stop staring. I figured he must have been lost in his thoughts and just happened to be looking in my direction. So I went to the other door, and I looked at him again. You guessed it, he was still staring at me. I started paying attention to this guy. Even sitting, he was huge. His arms were as thick as my legs. He looked like the fucking Hulk from those old movies. I was really tired from work that day, so I shrugged it off and went back to minding my own business. I mean, maybe he was just jealous of my awesome beard. The point is, I had no energy to deal with that right then, and maybe I was just being paranoid. My mistake. My stop was coming up, so I pulled the string. I don't know how buses work where you guys live, but here we have little strings attached to the ceiling, and when we want to get off, we just pull. A few seconds later, the bus driver stopped, and I got off, but not before seeing the huge guy get up. I started walking, feeling a bit nervous, and when I looked back, there he was, tailing me. He didn't even bother pretending he was going home or something. He had his eyes locked on me the entire time. I started walking faster, and I could hear his footsteps also picking up the pace. My street was on the next left, and it's very, very dark out. I realized that I would have to run if I didn't want this dude to catch up to me. As soon as I turned the corner, I ran like there was no tomorrow, which was exactly the case, I think. I heard the guy start to run. There was no way I would outrun him. My house was still pretty far, so I decided to go all in, and I stopped. I turned to face him, took off my backpack, held it in my hand, and waited. He yelled something to the effect of,
"I will kill you, you commie fuck."
He then attacked me. I threw my backpack at his face. When it was just about to hit, he dodged. I even saw the smile on his face, like he thought it was fun that I fought back. Well, it turns out, that's exactly what I was waiting for. Remember how I told you guys that I practice Kung Fu? I've been practicing for over 10 years, and when he dodged the backpack, my right foot was waiting to meet his jaw. It was only for a fraction of a second, but I saw his smile turn into a "what the fuck" expression as my foot plowed into his face. His eyes rolled back into his head and he dropped to the sidewalk. I grabbed my backpack, and before I booked it back to my house, I saw a shiny object sticking out of his pocket. A knife. This guy wanted to do some serious damage, and all of that because I have a beard and was wearing a red shirt. If it wasn't for my passion for martial arts, I probably would have never saw my wife and kids again. I won't lie to you and say that I had it all under control, that it was okay, and that I didn't feel scared. I was scared as fuck. By the time I got home, my legs were shaking so bad I had to ask my wife to help me to the nearest chair. She asked what was going on, and I told her. We called the police, but by the time they got there, he was gone. We are moving to a new place in a few days. After all, he followed me to my street, and he could be looking for me. The good part is, my wife has always nagged me for doing my Kung Fu. After what happened, she ordered me to keep practicing, and is thinking about joining as well as bringing the kids along too. At least something good came out of it. Hey guys, Unit 522 here, and I want to thank you very much for watching my video. I would appreciate it very much if you would share, like, and comment. And if you're new to this channel, become one with the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story or experience that you want featured on this channel, you can always send it to my email or post it on the Free Horror Stories subreddit. The links for those can be found in the description below. If you would like to help out this channel even more, consider a PayPal donation. And for more updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter. There's nothing wrong with a little darkness in your life, as long as you never forget there's always a reason to be afraid.